Okay, we are live. Good evening, everyone. This is Brother Lewis Montgomery. I am very pleased to be interviewing Brother David Barrett, along with my line brother, Brother Alan Hyde. Brother Barrett, how are you this evening?
I'm doing fine, thank you. How you brothers doing?
We're doing very well, too.
Good.
Thank you.
I'm ready to go.
So, dear brother, tell us where you're from and where you went to college.
Well, I'm from Newark, New Jersey. I started college at Delaware State College for Negroes, as it was called back then, 1961. And I started pledging Alpha while I was there. I was impressed with the men who I came to know later were Alphas with their behavior on campus. They were leaders everywhere. They were the head of the student government. They were heads of all the clubs and whatnot. So, and they would seem to be the smartest guys on campus. And I wanted to affiliate with them. I didn't know what a fraternity was at the time, and certainly didn't know what Alpha Phi Alpha was. But this was a group of guys who impressed me, and so I was just drawn to them like a moth is to flame, I guess, or light. That was primarily it. The prime influence for me to come in Alpha was with my uncle Hugo Owens, Uncle Hugo A. Owens, who was from Portsmouth, Virginia. I visited with him and his family in the summer of '62, I think. And he invited me to go with him to was a smoker, which of course I never heard of either. He was a guest speaker at a smoker for the Norfolk State College's Alpha chapter. And he launched his speech with a line from a very popular poster back in the 50s and 60s, was featuring Uncle Sam. And there was Uncle Sam with his uniform, and he has Uncle Sam wants you. And the guy points his finger, and so that's what he said. Alpha wants you. And he went on. I don't remember anything else in the speech. I just remember that got my attention, and I did not even know he was a member of the organization. He was speaking on whose behalf he was speaking. But that's where it started. I later did learn he was an Alpha, and it was very important to me that he was, and I really wanted so much to be like him. Since I was named. My middle name is his first name. And there's some more things that he did in my life that really I'm very grateful for. He was my chief mentor the entire time, as far back as I can remember. He encouraged me to do well in school. He encouraged me to be a good boy, they say, and follow the right path. And he was a perfect example. I started pledging at Delaware State in 1962. But in those days, I don't think there was a legal limit to how long you could be online. I mean, there probably was, but they just ignored it. So I started pledging in spring. When the semester was over, I was still online.
Oh, gosh.
So the several of the young men who were online with me were from New York City or New York City area. And we all agreed to get together over the summer and hang out. So the summer of '62, I spent in New York City. And during that weekend, we went to see, you may not know any of these people, but I'm going to call their names out because they're all legendary. Mama's Mabley, Art Blake and the Jazz Messengers.
Oh, yes.
The Coasters.
Yes.
And who was the fifth one? Herbie Mann, who recorded a song called Coming Home.
Nice.
So that was 2,025 cents and a matinee. So we hung out at the Apollo for whatever number of hours that was. Then went and got lunch someplace, and then we hung out, so just walked around New York City until it was nighttime. And then we drove down to Greenwich Village to what they called the, I forget what they call it, but essentially a jazz club.
Like the Village Vanguard, perhaps?
Pardon me?
Would it have been the Village Vanguard?
No, it wasn't that sophisticated. It was this place where you can get coffee, espresso they call it. And I thought that espresso was a common drink. Would you just say espresso, and everyone would know what you meant. So when the person came to our table and asked us what we wanted, I said espresso. He said, "What kind?" I said, "Oh my God, there are kinds." So I told him the most popular one that's here. I'll take that one.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first place where I actually saw two men kiss each other. That was the first in the village. Anyway, so we hung out there for a while. I had a great time, and at the time, I was hadn't started working. I hadn't even started gotten a job or anything for the summer. But I enjoyed my time with those brothers that I was out there. Um, I was made at technically I was made at Delta Iota, Rutgers.
Okay, Rutgers.
But at the
Okay.
time that I wanted to pledge, the chapter was not functioning, not active. So the alumni chapter, Alpha Lambda, um, brought me in under its auspices. So that was a bunch of older guys. So it wasn't as rigorous as it might have been, but it was still tough. I had some
Sure.
very accomplished men in that a judge, a prosecutor, and 3 or 4 school principals were the guys
Mm-hmm.
who were uh, um, making me. And I was fortunate to be going with one of the men, going with the daughter, going with the daughter of one of the men. And I think that helped me get in as well.
Sure. And what year was that, brother, that you were
That was
made?
1963. So I
1963.
started pledging in the spring of '62 at Delaware State, and then I continued in 1963 at Rutgers.
Okay.
The fraternal records will show that I pledged at Delta Iota, but I was actually ushered through by Alpha Lambda.
Okay, that's great. What are some of your best memories as a college brother?
Well, the summer of 1962.
That was a heck of a show you saw.
over in Harlem, man. That
Sure.
was just, it was the first time that I had been in Harlem on my own. I had cousins who lived in Harlem and in Brooklyn, but when I went to see them, I was a young man. I was taken by my mother. But this is the first time that I actually went to New York City on my own, on a bus by myself, and then without any adult supervision. So it was quite an exciting time for me. It doesn't have a whole lot to do with Alpha, but if had it not been for Alpha, I would have not had that experience. So that's why
Sure.
I think of it that way.
Absolutely. Well, let's flash forward many years. After college, what did you do for a living?
Well, I worked at Ballantine Brewery, where I majored in mathematics at Rutgers, and I worked that summer after I graduated at Ballantine Brewery, lifting what do you call it, the big kegs of beer off the assembly line and then putting them pallets and whatnot. So I worked that summer, and in the meantime, I was hired to be a mathematics teacher at Clinton Place Junior High School in Newark. And I started doing that in September of 1965. By December of that same year, I was invited to come to Pittsfield, Massachusetts to interview for a job that I don't even remember applying for it. I must have applied for it because back then they had these job fairs.
Okay.
And you go to the places in New York City, hotels, usually, and a whole bunch of companies, and you go walk around from booth to booth, introducing yourself with your resume, and then talking. So that wasn't a summer of '65 that I did that. So I don't know what happened, but in December they called me and said, would I be interested in coming to Pittsfield to be interviewed for a position with them? I said yes. I went for the interview. They hired me on the spot. I told them that I was teaching, that I had just started, and I'd like to push off starting until the school year's over, in June. They said, no problem. So I said, damn. So I had that thing waiting for me when I left teaching. I enjoyed my time in Pittsfield, largely because it was a new experience, first time totally on my own, and in a completely alien environment. I mean, the population of the county where the city was located was only 2% Black.
Oh my gosh.
I had to drive all the way to Springfield just to buy a jazz record or an R&B record. There's nothing Black at all in that town. There was a small Black community, but I think they might have been people who have been there for years, whose families have been there for generations. So I was looking to find to continue my Newark experience, but it was not going to happen in Pittsfield.
Sure, exactly. Were you teaching there?
I saw a movie in Springfield called 100 Rifles with Jim Brown. You might want to check that one out. That's what I saw in Springfield. They wouldn't have a movie like that in Pittsfield, I don't think. So I started work at GE in '66, June of '66. I was assigned to the Naval Defense Unit, and my job was to program nuclear missiles that were housed aboard the two submarine fleets. They had the Polaris and the Poseidon submarine fleets. They believed that, and I didn't know a line of code, I knew no programming language, but they believed that the best programmers were either electrical engineer graduates or mathematics graduates. And they trained me. I was on a training program for 3 weeks. I did no work, except that was my work, to go to school and do the assignments. So I did that for a year. Then pardon me?
What was the location for GE?
Pittsfield, Massachusetts.
Oh, it's still in Massachusetts. Okay.
Yeah, this is still, Western Massachusetts, in Berkshire County. It's if you've heard of the Boston Pops, it's the Tanglewood is a home of the Boston Pops, and that's where Tanglewood is located.
I live
also only 2 miles northeast of a place called Great Barrington, which is the birthplace of W.E.B. Du Bois.
Oh, okay.
So Alpha was knocking the whole time, I think. All right, so I stayed there for 2 years. I got married, and to my college sweetheart, and she just couldn't handle it. It was just too much to be at home alone. She was not having any luck getting a job interview. Getting a job offer. They would interview you, but they wasn't give no black woman anything higher than a secretary back in those days. So we had to leave and come back to Newark. But also Newark blew up. The uprisings took place while I was there, and I felt guilty that I was up in pristine, safe Pittsfield, and decided that we should go back to Newark and see if we can make a difference. I have two. Let's see. Oh yeah, I worked as I mentioned the Poseidon Polaris missiles, but that led me to become, when I moved back to Maryland, or to move to New Jersey, then Maryland, I got a job with a company called Computer Sciences Corporation, which had a big contract with NASA to do multiple things. One of which was to build a simulator for what they call the approach landing test of the space shuttle. So 10 years after Hidden Figures, here I am with 2 guys, and we're doing the next level of Hidden Figures. They said we weren't so hidden, and we spent 3 weeks out in the Mojave Desert testing this software. If you get a chance to Google space shuttle on Boeing 747 or 707, you'll see how they first tested the landing gear. They mounted it on top of the Boeing 707, then they released it. Then it would glide down. All right, so my job was to provide the software that would simulate the actual landing of the space shuttle. Our job was, not my job, it was 3 of us. So I stayed in the computer field for a number of years. I eventually got promoted to a manager and became a vice president. And then after I retired the first time, I sought to have to teach again. And I got hired here in Howard County, and I got hired at the county's only alternative school called Homewood Center. So I stayed there for 12 years. While I was there, I decided that I was going to complete this memoir that I had started like 20 years earlier of my childhood growing up in Newark, New Jersey. So when I retired, I was able to do that full time. So I focused on that. Published it in June of 2018, and have since been working on the second volume, which is my time 7 years as a leader in the Black Power movement in Newark, New Jersey.
Mm.
And then the third volume is going to be about my 12 years of teaching. So
Okay.
three distinct periods of my life.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Quite interesting. So,
and of course, and beginning, Brandon had a baby in 2019.
mm-hmm.
And at some point after, I was exactly when that was, my wife agreed to watch her 2 days a week. So that's been quite an experience for me. It's been a long time since I've had anybody that tiny.
Sure.
Brandon was the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
Sure
so we've been enjoying her 2 days a week, sometimes 3 days a week.
That's great. That's great. So tell us how you got involved with Kappa Phi Lambda.
Oh, that's an interesting story. So after my first marriage broke up, I moved here to Maryland, stayed with my sister for 9 months or so, and I met my wife in Howard, in the registration line at Howard, for registering for grad school.
Mm-hmm.
Then we got married in '76, and she got involved in an organization, a cable advocacy group that was pushing for cable to come to Howard County.
Mm-hmm.
And in that group were two men who were alphas, Moss Kendricks and Joe Collins were the two. So she dropped a dime on me and told them I was an alpha in hiding, and they harassed me until I came to a meeting. I went to 2 meetings. I was impressed with what I saw and thought that I'd want to affiliate with this organization. These guys appear to be serious and about something, so I wanted to be affiliated with that. So after attending 2 meetings, I announced I'm gonna join this chapter. I've been there ever since.
That's great. So tell us, we know you're a former president, and we'd love to learn more about how you've been involved with Kappa Phi Lambda over the years.
Well, my uncle told me, he said, if you ever want to become president, keep your mouth closed, and your ears open, and look around and see what the issues are. Look at the jobs that no one wants to do and volunteer to do those jobs and do them well and do it loudly, publicize it. So that's what I did. I had ideas that would be pushed back on, but I was always wise enough to see who the influential brothers were in the chapter, and I would talk to them first before I raised it on the floor, and I would get their support, and they would always, well, not always, but when I did that, I was always successful. One of those ideas was the Alpha Achievers, but I'll get to that in a second. Okay. The first one was that the Martin Luther King breakfast was held at a place here in Columbia, that seated only 400 people. The brother who was in charge of tickets would boast that we sold out of the MLK tickets by November, by Thanksgiving, he would say. And I asked a dumb question: has anybody checked to see how many inquiries we had after we got sold out? The answer was no. So they were proud that they had sold out. I said, but this is supposed to be a fundraiser. Should we be trying to maximize our revenue from the event? And if we stuck out 400, we can never go beyond the 400. So I persuaded them to try this place called Turf Valley. And we tried Turf Valley. The first 700 capacity sold out the first time we went there. But then when we were about to go back a second time, an incident occurred involving Brother Sherman Howell that caused us to withdraw from Turf Valley and also to call for a boycott of Turf Valley. So we had a coalition and alliances with Black organizations, white organizations, say boycott Turf Valley until they got rid of the guy who made this racial slur over his speaker answering machine. He didn't know was still on. Chairman Howell that called him to inquire about their hiring practices, and the guy was offended that we even asked the question. So then he started saying something. He thought he had hung it up, but he hadn't. It was still recording. So Sherman played it back. So that was that. Okay. So we the Alphas led that boycott. I was one of the brothers in the chapter who persuaded us to be part of that. Then the other one was with Comcast Cable that had Howard University as one of its features, but then decided that since someone had lobbied heavily for them to have BET, that they would drop Howard and get BET. So they had public, yeah, right. You say that now, right? But back then it wasn't so unusual. So Ken Jennings and I got a meeting, permission to appear before the, whatever the board was, the council, I don't know, was the board of directors or whatever it was. And we objected to their dropping Howard University. And so they said, well, this is our decision, it's our company, and we're giving the community what we think is best for the community. So we said, well, okay, what we're going to do, and this is just before the breakfast, by the way, so we're going to do, we have a breakfast every January where there are about 700 people come from all over Howard County and beyond. We're going to encourage those people to drop a premium channel for every year every month that you do not bring back Howard University TV. And they called our bluff, and people start dropping the channels. So,
wow.
So there was an organization that's a part of the Department of Justice. I can't recall what it is, but their job is to look for potential, what they call racial flare-ups in the country, and send in a team of people to help cool things down and negotiate a settlement peace. So this guy, I can't think of his name right now, called us out of the blue and said, I'm so-and-so and so-and-so. My job is to do so-and-so. I'd like to know if you would meet with us. So Ken Jennings and I met with him. We said, yeah, we'd be willing to meet with him. So he's going to be the, what do you call the guy in the middle, the arbitrator? Yeah. So he contacted the executives at Comcast, and they agreed to meet. All right. So the word we got from this guy, Henry something, they thought that we were just a little community organization in Howard County. So he explained to them who we really were. Then it got their attention. We had 2 meetings. We had already people had already begun to drop the channels. We had 2 meetings, and in the 3rd meeting, they said, okay, one of our technicians has shown us that this thing called splitting a signal. We actually have the capacity to do twice as much as we're doing right now, just by sharing a signal that we're using right now for Howard for BET with Howard. So we not only got our station back, we created a business opportunity for them to expand their base. And so we made them, I know they got promotions behind this,
Sure.
Right.
So those, I think those 2 things were what put us on the map in Howard County, because we were out front with all of it. We weren't coy. We weren't bashful about what we wanted. And we said that if they're going to have a station for, and it had any number of things. Logically, it did make any sense, because BET, Howard University was like the 17th most watched program that they had. They thought it was only for Black people, but now I'm having some white friends. So we watch HUT all the time. So they miscalculated that. They had to eat crow, and we got the station back. So now Howard University, if you're in DC area, we can't get it on up here, or I can't get it with DirecTV, but you can still get it still on. They had us on, Ken Jennings and I were on their program where they thanked us publicly for our efforts to get them back. And Hokojo Namde was the host at the time.
Oh yeah, sure.
He was the host of a program. I can't recall what it's called, but that's sort of a history to that. When I started writing these questions, answers, I said, boy, this stuff is all coming back. So I got to put this in my book.
Wow.
Well, very
that's
good.
the story there. Alpha Achievers. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So I mentioned my granddaughter, right? So I joined KPL in 52. I had several offices in KPL, volunteered for a bunch of different things. And I was director of educational activities. I was vice president under Brother Freeman Sands, and which was a very valuable experience working under Brother Sands, because he had the advantage of a few years on me, plus more time in Alpha than I had. At that point, I pledged Alpha in 63, so 1982. I guess what was that, 29 years, whatever it is. He had more experience, and I respected him because he had a perspective that I hadn't had. He did this.
He's
Pardon
my
me?
father-in-law. He holds you in very high regard too.
Yeah, I learned that today. My wife said he said his father lives down the street. I said, Freeman? She said, yeah. I said, damn, I didn't know that. So Dee Dee's your wife?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. She said, what does Dee Dee stand for? I said, Dolores. I don't know. What is it Dolores?
Actually, it's Deidre Dolores.
Oh, Deidre. Okay. Oh, two
Yeah.
D's. Okay.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Anyway, so Brother Sands was hard on me. My first meeting as president, I campaigned. What was the time we're supposed to be in by 6, out by 8. That was my campaign. That was my promise, man. I didn't know what I was talking about. I mean, that's what I wanted to do, but I had not made a proper assessment of my environment and the different personalities in the room. I mean, I think at the time there were only about 30 people in the chapter. We used to call it the biggest little chapter in the East. We got all these awards of this. How can you do that with only 30 people? Well, we work hard and we're smart. Good combination. So in my first meeting, I couldn't get it over in 2 hours. And I got frustrated and it showed. I started yelling at them. You want to get out by 2? You said you wanted to be out by 8, but you're not acting like it. Well, it's not me. It's Brother so-and-so over here. He won't shut his mouth. Oh, man, Lord have mercy. That was tough. So when I got home, Freeman called me. Dave. He said, you're taking it too seriously. I said, but I promised 2 hours. And Freeman said, yeah, I know. He said, some promises can't be kept despite your best intentions. So that was a very valuable lesson. And then when my time, I went for both terms. In the beginning of the first fraternal year after the conclusion of my second term, my wife and I had been in Baltimore at some function, and I was rushing to get back because I can't be late. She said, "You're not president anymore." I've been so accustomed for this 2 years of being on time, ready, and if suddenly I don't have that pressure anymore. So that was what it was really. Freeman got me. He got me convinced that I could be a leader in Kappa Phi Lambda, and that if I show them the right way, approach it logically, I get support. So he's the one who said, get some people to be on your side. You don't have to be by yourself all the time. And you get the right people on your side, you'll be successful.
It's good advice. Tell us about Alpha Achievers.
Alpha Achievers. Brother Dave Campbell approached me. He called me one afternoon, a Saturday afternoon, said it was a neighborhood and wanted to come by and talk to me about a couple of things. That's unusual. Talk on the phone. Why you got to come by my house, man, on Saturday too? So he came by and he said, I've been thinking that we need to expand our presence at Oakland Mills High School. At the time, we were doing Project Alpha and only at Oakland Mills, and that was once a year. He said, I'd like for us to be doing something where we have a presence at least most of the year, if not all of the year. So I called together my crew, and that was Ken Jennings, one of Ken Jennings' sons-in-law, Calvin something, can't think of Calvin's last name.
Calvin Austin?
No, not Calvin Austin. Anyway, it'll come to me. And Sal Weiler, the late Sal Weiler, and that's 4, right? Yeah, so it's 4 of us. So we talked to kick some things around. I said, I have an idea. Said it might be considered a leadership. I think we should try to form an organization of high achieving young men. I said, if things are no different from the way they were when I was in high school, if you're a good student, you are in a bullseye. People are you're a target, and people who harass you for being smart, for being white, the usual stuff. It turned out things hadn't changed that much. So we went to Marshall Peterson, who was the principal at Oakland Mills High School. We explained to him what we wanted to do. He says, I know exactly what you mean, and I have a perfect example. There's a young man by the name of Marcus Bryant, who I found in the stairwell one afternoon after school with his physics book, studying in the stairwell. I said, Marcus, what are you doing? He said, why are you studying here? He said, well, I have to, because if the kids see me with my books, they'll harass me. So he said, this is the kind of kid we want. The kind of kid who is smart. He doesn't have any friends. He doesn't know of other smart kids, but they're there. I said, so we could bring these guys together they can form a group and they can support each other and protect each other from the harassment.
Mm-hmm.
So not only did he have some boys in mind, but he also had a person who could be the school advisor, Vincent James, who was the first advisor for the Alpha Achievers. And that's how it all started. And it grew from 18 to what it is today, which is 350 or 400, depending on what time of year you take the count. But that's where it came from, and it grew from there. And the innovative chapter was the Oakland Mills chapter. They designed the shirt, they designed the ritual, the pledge, not pledging, the induction ceremony. They designed all that.
Okay.
We were just on the sideline, which is what we wanted. I mean, the program initially consisted only of an prominent alpha man in Howard County speak to them once a month. That was the whole program. I think the budget was like $12. I mean, $30 for the first, no, $75 was the budget for the first year. That's just buying snacks. But over the summer, the young man approached Vincent James and they said they wanted to continue Alpha Achievers, but they want to be in charge of themselves. You know, I said, well, that's what we were hoping they would do, but we thought we had to prod them into doing so. But that turned out not to be the case. So that's how I started. Matter of fact, the man who was the president, Marcus, the young man in the stairwell studying, became a poster child for Howard Community College.
Wow.
He got a full ride. He got a full ride to HCC. Then he got a full ride to Johns Hopkins, and he majored in computer science. Yeah, so that's a success story.
That's a great story. So you've touched on a few things, but I was going to give you an opportunity, Brother Barrett. If there's other particularly fond memories you have of being an alpha, what are some of what would you consider to be some of your personal highlights being in the house?
Well, in general, it's the camaraderie among the brothers. That even though there are 100, maybe 200, sometimes even 300 members in the chapter, they're only a small subset of that you really bond with. You know, and that becomes your crew. And we're so large now that we don't have any idea who anybody is. I've seen Brother Hyde, but that's all I can say. I've seen him. I've seen you. That's all I can say. I've seen you. But you're the golf guy too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, right. That's how I know this man. So I think that I got this compliment from my wife, which was at the time intended to be a criticism. I forget what else we were having some dispute about something. She said, "The only friends you have are alphas." I said, "Thank you."
That's nice.
And it turns out to be the case. I mean, now that I'm in my advanced years, that's very important. It's very important because the people whom I was not that close to outside of Alpha are dropping off. The people are there dying. I look around, wow, now who's left? So this is very. I never thought of 20 years ago, 30 years ago that I'd be in this place thinking like this, but I'm here now and I am thinking like this, and I am so glad that I have these alphas around who I can call on and with whom we can reflect on certain things that occurred in our lifetime. You know, I talk about Emmett Till. All of us were little kids when it happened, and we can remember where we were, what we were doing, and how we got our parents to try to explain to us how this could happen, and no one be held accountable. Those stories. So and I have Alpha to thank for those opportunities to do that. So I think Alpha's important. I gave the examples of how we led the community in those boycotts, but I think we came into national prominence outside the Divine Nine during the campaign to get the King Memorial built.
Sure.
Legislation first, then a memorial, raise the money to build it. So I think that's kind of what put us on the map for the larger America, if you will. Then, of course, prominent members such as Thurgood Marshall and Dr. King didn't hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. One last question, Brother Barrett. Obviously, we know that Alpha was founded in 1906. Why do you think it's important today?
Well, I think it's important today, well, especially today, because all the stuff that's happening that is exposing the cracks in the armor of America. You know, we just got finished reading, I'm in the KPL book club, led by Brother Swain. We just got finished reading Caste. We had a discussion of it last night, and I thought I knew some history, but I didn't know this. I didn't know any of this. And I understand now just what a piece of work America was destined to become based upon how it started.
Mm.
And I think it's brothers like us, Alpha Phi Alpha in particular, or in general, KPL in particular, who understand this, who would be able to apply what we've learned in reading this book, as well as the one, the Some of Us is another book that we're going to read next time around. I just think we are established leaders in the community. We're respected. They know we're serious. And when there's a problem, people call Alpha. I had a call from a woman last week who wants to partner, as she put it, with us to target ninth graders kids coming into ninth grade who need help, academic help. So I never heard of these people. That's why are they coming to us? Well, it turns out that Harvey Moran, who goes to St. John Baptist Church, and this woman who goes to the same church, somehow they met, and Harvey referred the word to me. I'm saying to myself, well, who are these people? Never heard of them. So if things are happening, call the Alphas. Even my white friends say that. Call it. This is a job for the Alphas. And they're usually right.
That's great. Well, Brother Barrett, it's been a real pleasure to interview you and hear a little bit of your story. And as an Alpha, we thank you so much for your time, and thank you for all you've done, because you've certainly shown younger brothers like Brother Hyde and myself the way, and we're just very proud to be able to follow in your footsteps. So
thank you very much. I thank you for the opportunity.
So much.
It's a wonderful initiative, and I don't know why I wouldn't get this idea some time ago, because we didn't have Zoom and Google Meets and whatnot. It makes it very easy to do it this way.
Yes.
So
Thank
you so much.
It's been our pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night, brothers.
Have a good night.
So how do you get out of this?